Jay with AV News. We're here at Kintex for the World Hydrogen Expo 2025. I'm here for an interview with one of the keynote conference speakers here, Mikaa, a senior researcher from H2. There's a little bit more to that title, I understand. Nice to see you again.
Jay. It's a real pleasure.
Absolutely. Mikaa, please introduce a little better than what I did exactly what your role is at your company and what your company does.
Well, I don't work for a company, in fact. I'm a researcher. I'm a senior researcher on hydrogen markets, geopolitics and strategies. So my job is to actually assess whether countries are actually delivering on their hydrogen strategies and targets or not. And I'm with the University of Quebec in Trois-Rivières in Canada, the Canadian Research Chair in Clean Hydrogen.
Wonderful, there we go. So I've actually interviewed some researchers who are tied to companies, but you're not tied to a specific company.
Nope.
You're working with a university.
Correct.
And you're either kind of quelling the hype or building up the hype depending on what is actually happening in the hydrogen world, right?
Yeah, exactly. My job is to really collect data to see where the market is going, how the market is doing, and where effectively the market can go. So I'm not here to build hypes or to make sure that everybody's depressed, but I'm trying to basically say this is the evidence-based approach that needed to be understood and that needs to be known of the hydrogen market today. So voila, I can share some data, and this is what I'm going to be doing this year again here at the World Hydrogen Expo 2025, data on what's happened in 2025, because this year has been absolutely crazy in hydrogen, and it's a real turning point globally.
You're also a speaker here. Are these, we're definitely going to hit those points. I have follow-up questions and I'm very curious. You're one of the first researchers that I've interviewed in this aspect of the industry. And so I have some personal questions, I have some built-in questions. But first of all, what are you speaking about?
So I'm speaking about the state of the global market this year. As I've said just before, this year has been a turning point on many aspects. And the two main points that people need to know here is, first of all, that there's been a major diplomatic, international relations, geopolitics related turning point. Of course, with the election of Donald Trump late last year, and how he has already impacted quite significantly and quite negatively as well the hydrogen economy, and vice versa. And on the opposite, I'm going to be also explaining how new technologies, new products, new projects are actually coming out of the ground as promised during the hype times of 2022, 2023, and that is basically sustaining the market moving forward. So what I'm going to show is how politics and geopolitics are impacting the market negatively, but how the industry is delivering what it's promised, and that is kind of positive. Okay,
so there's some positive and negative aspects built in, which is expected from any type of realism, bringing some realism, some actual research into the topic here, not necessarily the fluff of some companies proposing what could be, for example. Talk to me a little bit about the industry. What are some trends you're seeing going on these days? What are some major issues? I've heard things about pricing, that the pricing is still too high. There's a big price gap. I've heard about lack of regulations, for example, but I've also heard from a positive standpoint, especially from some Korean companies here, about how the technology is actually ready to go for the most part. What are your opinions or facts about this matter?
Yeah, I'd rather go for facts and opinions for sure. So basically one fact that is very important this year is that we are reaching, and I mean collectively, globally, we are reaching a number of psychological thresholds that are quite significant and that basically show that this market is here to keep progressing and hydrogen is here to stay. One of those psychological thresholds that have been passed this year is we often hear in hydrogen conferences about there's a chicken and egg problem and there's a production and demand, the two don't meet, and so on and so forth. At the end of this year, 2025, we will have at global level a equilibrium point between the production of low carbon hydrogen and the firm committed offtake of roughly 4 million tons per annum of capacity by 2030. And here, we're not talking about projections, we're not trying to say, well, the curve is going to go up because we're projecting stuff that we've seen before. No. We're talking about firm offtake on the one hand, and projects that are actually right now either in construction, already operating, or that have reached final investment decision point. So 4 million tons per annum, it's still a low amount, of course, compared to what's needed, meaning more than 100 million tons of hydrogen by 2040, at least, to get to net zero and to make sure that hydrogen helps the world getting to net zero by 2050. But this is a very good beginning. And then the second threshold that is very important is the fact that by the end of this year, 2025, globally, we will have more than 1 million ton per annum of low carbon hydrogen capacity installed, operating. So that means that for the first year in history, low carbon hydrogen will reach effectively 1% of the global production. And once again, I know it's small, but when you see how innovations get to the market and impose themselves on the market in history, all kinds of innovations, you know how the buildup works. And so 1% is key. It shows investors that yes, something is really starting to emerge. There's a scale-up trend that is happening. And we will reach 2% in 2 years' time, 2027. And we will reach 4% by the end of 2030. So we are seeing this thing, and the hydrogen ship, is now sailing off, and that's great.
So you're seeing a bit of a snowball effect, whether it's small or not, seeing the start here, which of course is going to spur investment, show that this is really happening. That is a great positive aspect of the industry. I've been working at this exhibition 3 years now. I've seen you a couple of times.
Absolutely.
As you said, there was some hype and some maybe over projection happening a few years ago. Why you see some positive aspects of the industry actually moving forward, being implementable. What are some either difficulties or obstacles that you're seeing happening?
Yeah, there's plenty of obstacles still, of course, that makes sense. And one of the main obstacles at this point is, of course, the regulation. And by the regulation, what I mean is there's plenty of different sides or pretty different segments of the hydrogen economy which lack proper dedicated regulation. And because of that lack of proper delegated regulation, these segments of the hydrogen economy actually cannot scale up the way others, such as, for example, electrolytic hydrogen production capacities, now do scale up. So basically when we talk, and here in Korea we talk a lot about liquid hydrogen, indeed, from a technological point of view, the progress made by the research labs, by the companies here in Korea, but also globally, has been impressive in 2024 and 2025, to the point where now we can consider liquid hydrogen as a real possibility, as a real growing scale market by 2025, by 2028, 2029, 2030. So great, but if you want to trade liquid hydrogen from one country to another, you will have to harmonize regulations. You will have to harmonize all the things that govern cross-border business making. And this harmonization is not there. In liquid hydrogen, it's true in solid state, hydrogen storage, it's true in many other aspects, and that is hampering the market. And that's only one example of many.
Well, this actually leads me into my next question about what you see here in Korea of the strengths of Korean companies. Because what I've heard so much is the technology is there, but it is the regulations that's really keeping everything, the harmonization, as you eloquently put it, is keeping everything from actually happening, being brought to a global scale. Let's talk micro for a second. What are the big strengths you see happening coming out of Korea?
So in Korea, of course, there's a lot of innovations. And these innovations are very much focused on a number of segments of the hydrogen economy that have the potential to unlock many other big demands in other places in the hydrogen economy or in connected industries, such as ammonia or ESAF or whatever. So here in Korea, the fact that a lot of companies have focused on LH2, liquid hydrogen, is a very important feature, because LH2 will be needed indeed if we want globally, once again, to globalize trade in hydrogen. So what Koreans are doing in LH2 will benefit most likely many other markets globally as we move forward. Then another thing, when it comes to pipelining, when it comes to tanks, hydrogen companies in Korea, once again, are at the forefront of the battle globally, and they are setting standards. So by setting these standards, they are enabling other governments around the world to actually develop the standards for their own country based on these technologies here in Korea that would enable their own market. So once again, what I'm trying to say here is that Korea, in as much as a handful of countries around the world, like France or Germany or China also, or Japan, what companies here are doing is basically unlock the market for others as well.
Right.
Building this snowball effect from the start. This is also true in applications. Like Korean companies were some of the best in the world 2 years ago, 3 years ago already in hydrogen drones, in hydrogen applications for example, submarines, and many other things like that in stationary or of course in lightweight mobility.
Sure.
So Korea is really setting a standard that others look up to and adopt or adapt for their own market, and that shows how, once again, from a local industry point of view, you can have a global impact.
Right. Local industry to global impact. We're also here at the World Hydrogen Exhibition now. What are your overall impressions about the event as a whole?
So I'm going to be honest here once again. The event is smaller than what we've seen last year, but that is a good thing, in fact. In any innovation, any innovative industry, there's a natural attrition that comes into play at some point. Exactly. You've got this boom. You've got this peak, emotional peak of inflated expectations, and at some point, of course, things kind of shrink down to projects that are actually sound, that have good fundamentals, and that are actually delivering. So having a smaller event in 2025 compared to 2024 is not a bad thing, because the people who are here are most likely people who are actually delivering stuff.
Right.
And that is what not only the industry needs, but that's also what politicians need to see.
Of course.
Because these politicians come to events and there's like all of these inflammatory or over-promising claims and whatnot. Then politicians start planning based on these overarching claims and eventually don't help the industry.
Right.
So the fact that we have this natural attrition here, even here in Korea, which is one of the most advanced countries in hydrogen in the world again, this is actually a very good signal that this industry is maturing for the better.
There you go. So the maturity coming out of here as well, talking about some different trends from a research, from a factual point of view. What are some trends you're seeing towards the end of this year, or hot topics, and what do you see carrying on to next year? You mentioned, of course, carbon neutrality is the main goal. You mentioned 2027, 28, 29 is when some implementation could happen. What are we seeing though as far as next year is going to go?
So what's very interesting, and that's basically like building upon what's happened in 2025. We've had in 2025 the first 500 megawatt end-to-end integrated green hydrogen production plant coming out of the ground and operating. This plant is not taking place here in Korea, it's based in China, in Chifeng, in Inner Mongolia. But this plant, 500 megawatt again, made by Envision Energy, is a very interesting one because it's the first time that all around the world we have a plant built by a company that masters from end to end all the components of that plant and have built a project that is actually replicable almost as is, literally, all around the world more or less. So based on that, now that we have this replicable capacity at scale, now we can envisage in 2026 new projects coming in, better financing opportunities, more financiers altogether coming into this industry, because it shows that yes, the scale up capacity is there. This will help also clients believing that this industry is actually ready to deliver. This will help politicians understand that this industry has already delivered the first of a kinds here and there that are needed to basically say, yes, this is going to be here to stay. So 2025 was once again a turning point in many, many different aspects. Globally, there's now 120 countries that have a national hydrogen strategy, one way or another. When we first met a few years ago, there were only 40 of such countries.
And now 120.
Now 120. So basically what we're talking about now is roughly 98% of the global GDP being covered one way or another by a hydrogen strategy, if you like. So I'm just trying to show here that what we're going to see next year is an industry starting to rebound, not because there was a crisis in 2024, 2025, but because this natural attrition has made this industry more mature and so more ready to actually deliver real stuff. So honestly, it's a very exciting moment for the hydrogen industry, and everyone was looking forward to this moment. This moment that, as a turning point, signals that this industry is no longer a innovation-based, R&D-based industry,
right,
but it's now moving into, just like solar or many others like that, a real thing.
A real viable source.
Absolutely.
Mikaa, thank you so much for the insight. It's such a pleasure to speak with the research, speaking with factual data, and not putting a spin on anything, but giving a realist point of view of, like you said, it's smaller, but that's a good thing. Consolidation, bringing this actual technology to use, and with a POC proof of concept happening in China that can be replicable and helping bring real renewable energy sources to the world.
And if you allow me just one thing, I wanted to mention that Korea is also leading the way in lightweight mobility. Of course, Hyundai is a major sponsor of the event.
Sure.
So we know that. But what Hyundai has been doing with the Nexo second generation SUV this year is, once again, one of the proof that this industry is moving forward in the right direction. And this is also a little bit, how can I put this? China is looking at this and saying, wow, what have we missed there?
Okay.
Just in 30 seconds, if you allow me to.
Sure.
China in 2020 said, by 2025, we need to have 50,000 fuel cell electric vehicles on our streets.
Okay.
Korea did not set such a target.
Okay.
But truth is, now with the unexpected high sales of the Nexo, heavily supported by subsidies, but once again, that makes sense. It's an early adopters market still. It makes sense. Well, basically, we are seeing Korea reaching this 50,000 FCEV target that didn't have. By the end of this year, 2025, when China is stuck at like 30-ish, 31,000 FCEVs. So now China is like, oh, we need to respond. We need to have in 2026, 2027, a rebound plan for the hydrogen mobility stuff. So this is creating emulation. That's where I'm going with this. And this is spinning a snowball effect once again that will be most likely positive for everyone as long as the competition remains sane. And just one final figure. In Korea, once again, we've seen that in the first half of 2025, in the large-scale electric buses market, FCEVs, so FCEBs in buses this time, have reached a market share of more than 19%, almost 20, which means that 1 of 5 buses sold in Korea in the first half of 2025 are running on hydrogen. This is a major factor because it's the first mobility segment in the world that has reached not just the early adopters market threshold, but the early mainstream adoption threshold. And this is happening once again in Korea.
Thank you so much for your time, all the insight. I learned just so much from talking to you. Welcome to Korea again. I'm sure I'll see you next year, and hopefully the hydrogen market keeps expanding, keeps growing, keeps maturing, and we'll see renewable energy make a stronger foothold and continue to move to carbon net zero, our ultimate goal, right?
Yeah, 감사합니다.
Thank you. 감사합니다.
감사합니다.
Thank you.